Live, the reading series of the Writers Association of Northern Appalachia. I'm your host, Damian Dresick, and lucky for you, this is your other host,
Christina Fasonic. Well, I don't know how lucky they are. I mean, I made a post earlier today about how I feel like this is the 39th week of the semester, and it's starting to feel that way, even to the students. Usually they're still like, yeah, we can make it at this point, but not today. They were stressing out. So
students were doing. They were into things today. I was happy to see that. But I agree. I think we all feel that this is week 39 of the semester.
Yes, week 39 of a million yard semester. Yes. So
we have a new writer, a writer that is new to WANA Live.
Yes,
but not new to the Writers Association of Northern Appalachia.
That is correct. So I'll tell everybody a little about her, and then we will have a chat. We'll listen to what she has to read for us. So Jennifer Schomburg, and I hope I'm saying that right, Kanke's work has recently appeared in New Ohio Review, Massachusetts Review, Shenandoah and Salamander. She is the winner of the Sheila-Na-Gig Editions Editor's Choice Award for Fiction from 2022. Her zine about her experiences undergoing chemotherapy for ovarian cancer, Fine Considering, is available from Rinky Dink Press, 2019. Her full-length poetry collection, The Swellest Wife Anyone Ever Had, about Appalachian Ohio, will be available from White Violet Press in fall 2024. She serves as a reader for The Dodge and as meter mentor in Annie Finch's Poetry Witch community. Actually, I think she told me she just had to step away from those publications, and I'm reading like an older version of her bio, but she'll tell us about that. And she can be found on YouTube as Meter&Mayhem, which I absolutely love. And so let's bring her out. Did you see that? I read your old bio. And you just corrected it too. So I know that you're not doing those two things anymore, but you are busy doing many other things like Meter&Mayhem. Do you want to tell our audience a little about that?
Sure, yeah. So Meter&Mayhem is the name of the channel, but there's an interview series that I do called the Meter Cute Interviews, where I interview writers when they've got books coming out or something exciting going on, or just somebody I'm interested to talk to. And I ask, everybody gets kind of the same basic 3 questions. I ask them what advice they'd give to themselves when they were younger, what advice they think their younger self would give to them now, and then also about what other writers that they love. And we just have a really great, fun conversation.
Yeah, I was looking at Damien's face when you said that, and he was like, ugh. And I know I've watched and listened to some of those while I've been like doing other things, and I've really enjoyed some of those conversations. And I think even if you think about the questions ahead of time, you don't really know how it's going to spool out until you start talking about it. So I've really enjoyed listening to that. And you've had such a variety of people on too. So super fun. And we met at ASA, not this year, but last year when it was in Athens, Ohio.
Yeah.
Which was very cool. We came up to the table, we had a chat, and here we are now. And we saw each other this year when we were in North Carolina. So, and I know you were doing a lot of stuff there. So what are you going to read for our audience tonight?
So tonight I'm going to read a long poem that is in sections. It's about the Ohio River flood of 1937. It pulls a lot from primary sources. So there's a really great documentary called River Voices that has a lot of good interviews. And then there's also the Portsmouth Public Library has an interview series that you can access in their archives, where they interview people who lived through the flood. And so there are some things that are sort of direct quotes from those primary sources. And then also my grandmother's stories are kind of mixed in there. And then I took some liberties with her dating history a little bit in the poem, but it's in there.
Well, you know, like fiction, you can kind of do what you want there with your poems. So I'm really looking forward to hearing this. So we will be back when you're finished.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you, Christine and Davian, for having me on here. So this is Scenes from the Flood. 1. First date, 1 in a million at the Columbia, January 5th. Wet, but not too terribly so. The couple that still weren't a couple settled into their seats amid the rustle of coats and newspapers, waiting sparks catch the electricity between them. Static or desire, who knows? Don Amici plays the part of savior and wise man, witty on the silver screen ahead, while crowds cheer a skating girl fast on the slickness of the ice, knowing she'll come out of her spin, ready to do it again. 2. Like Waiting on the Circus, January 18th. Waning to waxing, the moon changed its light as the rain kept coming down as before. Children watched from the windows of Lincoln School on the hill, hoping enough would show up, that class would be canceled, that adventure would greet them like a ringmaster waving from the floodwall's top. Famous floodwall, 60-some feet high, those bricks and pumps that made it safe for little boys to take for granted they'd grow to be big men. 3. Ding Dong Ditch, January 23rd. After all the alarms were long silent, the water rang the doorbell like a salesman come to call. It was only a formality, what with it already coming up the stairs and all. They opened the sewer drains to let destruction rise from below instead of crushing everything from above. But when it popped the manhole covers off itself, they remembered loss is loss, no matter which way it hits you. 4. Mimford's flood stories aren't Portsmouth's, January 23rd. Hollers kept safe by the hills, not to mention the distance between them and the river, are misty and gray. Does wander through with their fawns, not yet worried enough to seek higher ground. If there's something to know, they'll know in good time. Warnings whispered by cricks and by runs, if their waters are fixin' to cover what little grass there is to eat in the first place. Deer are no fools. They'll listen. 5. Stories not in the documentaries, January 24th. Prisoners shivered on the 3rd floor of the emptied courthouse, shackled and waiting for transport no one could say for sure was ever coming. What happened to the people on the 2nd floor of the Black Folks American Legion who hadn't anywhere higher up to go when the floor started buckling and the building to collapse? Cops were told to shoot to kill any looters they saw. This is no time for people like that. Call into WPAY for Christ's sake and ask for help like a civilized person. You work together or you take your chances with the river. 6. The only death in Ohio mothered the only Black person in the county historians ever interview about the flood. January 25th. Bessie's gone under the water, baby held high in the air, hoping that someone will grab her. Safety was only a few streets away when the boat capsized into the flooded street. Men in the nearby John boats quickly plucked her boys out, then reached for Birdie. When they turned back for the mother, fingers making contact, second of hope split in pieces as the Ohio made its claim. Is it still the river when it runs the muddy streets? When it leaves its quiet banks wandering in search of adventure? 7. Heroes in all sizes, January 27th. Many people owe their lives to teenage boys who got fancy motorboats for Christmas or National Guardsmen who said, "If you don't get in this boat, I will shoot you in the leg and carry you down myself." When stubborn men wouldn't leave their homes and their women wouldn't leave them. But how many people owe their lives to little skinny Albert Egbert shimmering through the top floor window of Worcester's Drugs to keep filling prescriptions for people as long as he could, even if he'd never seen them before that very second? 8. WPAY. We play all yodelers, January 28th. No one listened to them, that newer station that gives slots to people like the Morgan boys coming in from the hollers to sing a few songs late at night. Keep them calls and postcards coming in, folks. Fred Astaire, Guy Lombardo, that's what everybody wanted. Until the water started coming down and they had the sense to move their transmitters upstairs. Kept the lifelines open, calling from street to street. A family needs food on 10th and Waller. 2 men on McConnell looking for a ride to the mill to pick up paychecks. They promise they'll help with the rowing. Mrs. Simpson's at Mercy. She's in perfect health and wants you all to know she's had a 7-pound boy. Everybody loves you when you're singing their song. 9. Second date interrupted. January 29th. Sightseers, don't park your cars by the side of the road. If you ain't here to help, just get along home. 10. Third date by the river. January 30th. Trains full of refugees head to the north, full of children and dogs, sickly sweet smell of closeness and damp. Columbus and Chillicothe promise places for 5,000 souls. Nothing can go south, not over that river, no longer 2 miles wide, but still not yet itself. Enid wants to walk the rail bridge to Kentucky, see the current through the slats, dare it to take her on. He stays in the truck, watching her disappear into the distance. 11. After all, the water will come. January 31st. Mud will harden to concrete if left to settle there. Everyone comes with brooms, big push brooms meant for you to put your whole weight behind. When you focus on action, fear can find no foothold in the 2 inches of sludge covering everything. The 6,234 flooded houses, the 34,248 homeless, the 45,000 tons of debris, the $16 million of damage. 7 miles of new levee are built, 15 feet added to the flood wall. Though it's not much more, may it always be enough. May we always be enough. Thank you.
I really loved the poem. That was wonderful. The imagery was just so vivid. I really felt like you were able to put me there with the people. Really cool. I liked, especially at the beginning, it reminded me a little bit, and this is pretty disparate, but of like Kathy Shoup's book on the Denora Fog, or Stephen King's The Stand, where the tragedy that is to come is thrown into this terrific relief by the normalcy, the sort of quotidianness of what comes before.
Thank you. I mean, that's what I was going. Well, I mean, not specifically the things you referenced, but that's the vibe I was going for. So, yay. Thanks.
I really like the doorbell part, because it made me think about, if you've ever been in a flood, watching it rise, and it never needs to ring the doorbell because it comes in anyway. You're not stopping it. And I love that line where you ask the question, is it still the Ohio when it's over its banks?
Here's the line. So I want to see this. I love this line. I want to see this as an epigram. Is it still the river when it leaves its muddy banks? I know it's the Ohio. You love the Ohio. Yeah. But it's like it. I love that. Yeah, I jumped on that too. I was like, "Ooh, that's really good." Like I see that, like that's a profound philosophical fucking question.
It really is. Like, is it still the river when it's over its banks? And if not, then what is it now? What does it become?
Like I look at so many people's lives like that.
Give an example of that.
I don't know if I follow that.
My life, not of mine.
I think about like the way people's lives, particularly in Northern Appalachia, and the disaster, yeah, but I think more like deindustrialization and the kind of people they become that maybe they never imagined themselves being, but circumstances brought them to this. Are they still who they are after they leave the course they charted for themselves, or what they imagine could be the sort of sum of possibilities for themselves?
No, I get that, because I was thinking when you said that about my dad's friend who had always been a coal miner all his life, and the mine finally, there was no room for him. And I remember he had to be a Walmart greeter at the end of his life. Was he still a coal miner when he was a Walmart greeter? And he always considered himself that till the day he died. I'm a coal miner.
Yeah, my dad too. Craneman in the mill. Even though he did other work for the last 10 years of his working life, he wouldn't. It didn't even exist for him as a part of his identity.
Yeah, and so Jen, that question brought up more and more questions.
That's wonderful writing. I mean, that is nice work. I got to tip the hat there. Really good stuff.
Definitely.
Thank you. And now, with what we all have said about it, I'm now making the connection of that. For me, I was a teacher for about 20 years, and I don't do that anymore. I work for my state government, just editing things. And that is a question I think I struggle with right now. Like, am I still a teacher, even though that's like not what I'm doing? So yeah, interesting.
Yeah. I mean, and are you still, if your parents are gone, are you still a daughter? Are how do our roles change? I struggled with that myself when my children died earlier in my life. Was I still a mom, even though I no longer had living children? I mean, these are, like Damien said, it's a really big philosophical question. And sometimes as writers, we get to ask those.
It's the way the artfulness of distilling it into this image of the river, that this natural I really love that. That is freaking great.
Thank you. You guys are gonna make me blush.
So I also was thinking, when you were talking about the radio station broadcasting, our library here in Wheeling just did a big display and an article and stuff about the role that WWVA played. That's our radio station here, or it was, during the 1936 flood, so the year before, when the Ohio also flooded, and how that radio station, those people stayed as long as they possibly could before the floodwaters chased them out. But they were the lifeline, telling people where to find rescue workers, that people were stranded on the tops of their houses. If it wasn't for WWVA being on the air, people would have died. There's no question about that. And so I really appreciated you integrating that into this poem and talking to people about that's a piece of history now. Most people don't listen to the radio anymore. And I really appreciated that part, and it reminded me of that.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. The River Voices documentary has most of that information in some form or another came from that documentary. Even the stuff about people saying, yeah, we never really listened to WPAY before, but man, we listened to them after, right? Like, they sort of had these fans for life because of the role they played for people during the flood.
The best promotional thing they ever did.
I love it. Fans for life.
Yeah, right. And I wonder, what was the genesis for you? Why write about the 1937 flood? What brought you to this?
So in the early aughts, when I sort of first decided I was going to get serious about being a writer, like I'd always wanted to be a writer, but and one of the first things I did was I had a little tape recorder, and I sat down with my granny and had her tell me stories that I didn't know how or what I was going to do with them, but I was like, I'm going to be a writer, and this is important. I'm recording you. Tell me some stories. And one of the stories she told was about how during the flood, she and her sisters walked across to Kentucky, just because that seemed like a really fun thing to do. And I just kind of, I kind of put the tape aside and all the other stories that are on it for many years. And then when I listened to it again and started thinking about the flood, it just really struck me that there were people so close to them who were struggling for their very lives. And Granny and her family lived out in Minford. And so they had a different experience of the flood, that it was coming into town to kind of sightsee and see after the flood, like what's going on, how's everybody doing, and using an excuse to walk across the river. Like they had some flooding, but they didn't have sort of the kind of destruction and life-changing stuff that people had in town. And so then I started doing more research and finding the interviews and things to build the poem from.
Yeah, those floods were so destructive, and even recent floods here, there's always people on the radio saying, do not come to our neighborhood and sightsee. We cannot rescue people. We can't clean up because there's all these rubberneckers, But I understand the compulsion, though, because it's hard to even imagine the river being so high without actually seeing it for yourself and getting that close to something that powerful. I get why people go and look when the river is high. So this was really wonderful work, like Damien said.
And I kind of want to let our viewership know, if you're interested in catching some more of Jennifer's historical fiction, you needn't turn no further than the new issue of Appalachian Lit, in which her story Minnie at the Mirror appears. It's set in Akron, Ohio in 1943. And when I was reading, I liked all three of your the pieces that you sent in, but this one particularly spoke to me, and I really like being somebody. I thought you did a great job of capturing. So check that out. Minnie at the Mirror in issue 2, Appalachian Lit.
And I provided a link to that for our listeners on the shows in the comment section. And we do have a comment. Jessica Rainey says small town radio stations were important, and they were. I mean, we didn't have Facebook, scanners, anything like that then. We had the radio, and thankfully for battery operated transistors, for people to take them with them when they were hiding in the attic or wherever they had to go, or they never would have heard what was happening. There would be no updates. When you listen to or read things from the Johnstown flood, for example, if it wasn't for radios, people were sitting in the pitch dark, in blackness, and their only connection to people outside their own person was through the radio. So yeah, that was really amazing. Thank you so much for coming on and reading this poem. And what's up next for you? What are you working on now?
Well, I've got the book coming out, The Swellest Wife Anyone Ever Had. It's supposed to be out by the fall. So that's kind of one of the big things.
It's a great title, by the way.
Huh?
There's a great title. I really like the title.
Oh, thank you so much. It actually comes from a letter that my grandfather sent home during the war, that he was afraid he was going to get killed in the war. And he said, and people were sort of, his family was not being very kind to my granny about how she treated the kids, and just everything about her was just wrong according to them. And he was like, don't let them get to you. Just no matter what anybody says or anything that happens to me, just know you were the swellest wife anyone ever had. And I was like, I read that and I was like, there's my title. Thank you, Leroy. That's going on the book.
I love that. I love that in the personal connection there. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Jen. And we will be on next week celebrating WANA's 4th anniversary of being online. And we have a special guest that we will be announcing later this week. And we're pretty excited about that. And we hope that you will turn in next Thursday.
Tune in, Christine. Tune in. Do not turn in instead of watching.
I told you it was week 39 for me of the semester. See, it's anyways. Well, thanks again, Jen, and we will see everybody next week. Come celebrate with us. 4 years is a long time to be doing this week after week after week.
It really
and
is.
we've been lucky to have been able to do that. Good night, everybody.
Have a good night.